He reincarnated as a third-rate villain in a Yuri story, and his only goal is to live a peaceful life. However, the game's main heroine disappeared, and he ends up having to save the princess. In the Campbell Castle, our protagonist wakes up. He then wonders, didn't I get into a car accident? Did I travel through time? He starts looking around and notices that the decor and furniture have a medieval style. When he sees his reflection in the mirror, he realizes he looks a lot like his 17-year-old self. Moments later, he panics and asks himself, wait, did I go back in time? He then approaches the mirror and starts staring at it. Taking a closer look, he says, I was pretty handsome when I was younger. To be honest, it seems like they even improved me a little. Could this world be some kind of game? He starts reflecting and wonders, did I end up in another world because I got hit by a truck? Or is this just my imagination? He then grabs a knife and says, I need to confirm this. Blood starts gushing out, and upon seeing it, he says, it was just a little scratch, but this knife is ridiculously sharp. This hurts a lot. So that's it, damn it, I really did go back in time. He starts feeling strange, and a whirlwind of memories surges into his mind. Moon Campbell had blasphemed against the royal family, and because of that, he lost his noble title and became a commoner. His crime was unforgivable, and he was sentenced to exile. Time passed, and he was completely broken. Moon was dressed in rags, malnourished, and surrounded by garbage. He could never set foot in the Empire again, and if he violated that, he would be executed. Seeing those disturbing memories, our boy is left utterly shattered. He then says, it can't be. When I saw the name for the first time, I thought it was just a coincidence, but I never expected that I'd really reincarnate into that guy's body. That bastard, the third-rate blonde villain, Moon Campbell. The scene shifts, and he starts recalling the strongest character in the story. This was the most popular light novel of the year before his death, and it was also one of the few works he followed every day. Moon Campbell was a foolish villain who appeared at the beginning of the story. He used his family's status to intimidate the protagonist, constantly sending people to assassinate the heroine and giving the protagonist's group more experience. But in the end, his plans all fell apart, and the entire Duke's mansion got dragged into the mess. In the end, he was exiled to the border and became a beggar. If he remembers correctly, he was never mentioned again after chapter 20. Our boy feels depressed remembering this guy's actions and says, this guy, instead of being a decent young master, is an idiot who just gets in the protagonist's way, and now I'm that guy. I thought I'd be the protagonist after reincarnating. Instead, I ended up reborn in the body of this fool, who's destined for a life of misery. What should I do? My life is over. Someone knocks on the door, interrupting his thoughts, and he says, come in. And in walks a maid. It's Anne, guys. She says, hello, Master Moon. And he replies, ah, it's you, Anne. What's up? She answers, the outfit for tomorrow's banquet has arrived, and Madame asked me to bring it to you. Feeling a little awkward, he says he understands and asks her to leave it there. Anne then notices something strange about him and asks, Master, did you hurt yourself? He says yes, that he just hurt his finger by accident. Nothing serious. Do you have anything to stop the bleeding, like a band-aid or something? She tilts her head. Band-aid? Anne doesn't know what the young master is talking about, but if it's just to stop the bleeding, she can help. The maid kneels in front of him, and he, surprised, asks, you can treat it? But what surprises him even more is when Anne simply puts his finger in her mouth. Damn, guys, this mod is getting spicy. The protagonist immediately turns red, not understanding what's happening. She then stops and says, the bleeding has stopped. Every drop of the young master's blood is precious, so please don't hurt yourself. Completely flustered, the protagonist stammers, okay, I'll remember that. Anne then turns and says, if you don't need anything else, I'll return to my duties. The protagonist thanks her, saying she worked hard, and she finally leaves the room. The protagonist, who had been holding it in until now, can't contain himself anymore and exclaims, my god, what kind of morality is this? This is too good to be true. I don't know, guys. Excited, he starts rolling around on the bed, thinking, that gentle black-haired maid just now, she was so cute. Outside the room, Anne wonders, did the young master just thank me? Back to the protagonist, lying in bed reflecting, he thinks he's a handsome duke's son with high status, good looks, lots of money at home, and a bunch of servants. Why the hell did this bastard have to provoke the protagonist? If he remembers correctly, the real reason for his exile was that he drugged the Empire's third princess during her coming-of-age ceremony. The protagonist then stands up, determined, and says, now that I know the problem, it's easy to solve, just don't provoke the protagonist or do anything stupid at the coming-of-age ceremony. I, Moon, still have a chance to change my fate. If I want to stay a rich young master in the future, I need to think carefully. When is the coming-of-age ceremony? Anne just said a moment ago that he received a suit for the ceremony. The protagonist freezes and says, wait, it's tomorrow? Then he screams, holy shit, I'm screwed. In fetal position, he feels trapped and says, system? Grandpa? Goddess? Monk? Seeing no response, he despairs and pleads, can anyone notice me? Don't I have any chance? He pulls himself together, sighs, and says, tomorrow is the coming-of-age ceremony. It's too late. I don't know if personally apologizing to the protagonist tomorrow will be enough to mend the past. Besides, I doubt she'd ask for much, like making me lick her feet in public to forgive me. He imagines the scene of being completely humiliated in public, and after envisioning it, he stands up, determined, and says, "It's decided. When we meet tomorrow, I'll rush to her, kneel at the speed of light, and bow 3 times. Something then falls on his head, and irritated, he asks, "What the hell happened?" "That hurt like crazy. Who crushed my head?" He then spots a book on the bed, and as he reaches for it, he wonders, could it be? With the book in his hands, he says, "My cheat. Looks like God hasn't given up on me yet. Even if I'm a loser destined to be cannon fodder, it's different if I have a cheat. From now on, I'll change the original ending and rewrite my fate. As the saying goes, my destiny is in my own hands." The protagonist opens the book, and upon seeing its contents, he's completely stunned. He starts rotating the book, trying to understand what's happening, as there's nothing written inside. He wonders if there's a special way to activate it. As he ponders, little by little, his blood starts to drip onto the book. After that, a dark aura begins to rise from it. Seeing this, he's shocked and says, "Holy shit, what's happening?" His blood gets sucked into the book, and little by little, his consciousness fades. The scene cuts, and his arms and legs are chained. Moon is completely dirty and unconscious. Slowly, he begins to wake up. He asks himself, "Where am I?" A terrifying girl stares at him and says, "Finally, you're awake. I've been waiting for you for a long time." The protagonist is shocked to see who it is. The protagonist then begins to feel intense pain, and Anne says, "Pain is inevitable. It's all to teach you a lesson." She then starts tracing her finger along his body and says, "You have no idea how sad I am right now. You shouldn't be like this. You're so evil, cruel, and selfish. You should bring pain to others instead of tolerance, and you should make everyone hate you. Only then can you belong to me. But you've changed. You've changed your heart. It won't work like this." She then gives him a psychotic look and says, "But don't worry. No matter how long it takes, I'll completely purify you with my love. Over and over again, we'll be together forever. Not even death can separate us." Seeing that she was trying to kill him, the protagonist starts screaming desperately, "No, no, no!" until he finally wakes up. He's gasping for air and asks himself, was that just a dream? Then he looks at his trembling hands and thinks, the pain on my skin still lingers, and that dream felt way too real. Could this be some kind of prophetic dream? Before I passed out, I remember that book started flipping its pages like crazy and drew a lot of blood from me. If it really was a prophetic dream caused by that book, then was that bad ending because of something I did wrong? He then notices something strange about the book. Written on it was, "Do not change fate." Suddenly, the book turns into black smoke and begins to seep into his forehead. He wonders, is this a warning not to change the original storyline? Otherwise, I'll face that ending, but why? Why the hell would that lead to a tragic outcome? He walks over to the window and concludes, "In the end, my thoughts were just an illusion. To survive, the only choice I have left is to walk the path of destruction." Then, he gets an idea and says, "Wait a minute. Actually, thinking about it, the original ending doesn't seem so bad. At least I survive in the end. Besides, that second-generation rich brat had no skills to make a living, so he was exiled and naturally became a beggar, but I'm different. I'm a super employee who endured countless trials in modern society." Anyway, the plot doesn't say what Moon Campbell becomes at the end, so after being exiled, I could simply start over in another country with the wisdom of modern people. Plus, there's nothing special about being a noble. It's just a privileged class gained by exploiting workers. As a true proletarian, I can still have a good life in this world with my own hands and knowledge. The scene cuts, and he's munching on a big steak. He thinks, damn, I've never eaten such a delicious steak and wine in my past life. This damn privileged class really... Smelling the food, he thinks, what a wonderful smell. His mother, noticing something's off, asks, what's wrong? And why does little Moon seem so happy today? His father laughs and says he must be excited for tomorrow's coming-of-age banquet, as it's one of the most important banquets of his life. Our boy, who isn't dumb, tries to play along and replies, "Yes, Dad, Mom, I'm looking forward to it." His mother, excited, says, "My little Moon has grown so much, I really don't want to let him go. Surely my son will be the center of attention at tomorrow's banquet. How many noble ladies will fall for him?" The Duke laughs and says that's not possible because our little Moon already has a fiancé. Besides, if Princess Silesia shows up and gets jealous, it'll be hard to explain. The Duchess then gets upset and says she doesn't like Princess Silesia because she's too cold and not cute at all. She isn't worthy of their little Moon. His father replies, "Don't say that. If he isn't worthy of Princess Silesia, no one is." Watching the two argue, the protagonist thinks, "My dear parents, how much confidence do you have in your son? Princess Silesia, the third princess of the empire, the pure white child, blessed by God, and a strong candidate for the title of the most beautiful woman in the empire. She's always the center of attention wherever she goes, and on top of that, you two have no idea what kind of rotten fish your son is. Only you two in this world treat him like he's a treasure. In the novel, you're both good people, but it's a shame you gave birth to a son like this. According to the original plot, you two will be caught up in the coming-of-age incident, and after that, the entire Campbell family will be expelled from the Empire's nobility and disappear completely from history. Even if the book says I can't go against fate, I can't accept that. I need to find a way around it. If I can't change my own fate, then I'll change other people's. Analyzing the incident, attacking the princess wasn't the real reason for his punishment and exile. The true reason was that his father was implicated in a treason crime, which dragged Duke Campbell, who held military power, into a power struggle, leading to him being taken down by the Empire's nobility and aristocracy. So, under the premise that the ending remains unchanged, the Campbell family must be removed from the incident so I can use them as a life-saving talisman after the exile. The scene shifts to later with the protagonist thinking, only one day left until the coming-of-age ceremony. It's too late to make preparations. I'll have to adapt when the time comes. The main goal is to avoid the predetermined outcome of offending the royal family, the pure white girl and future queen of the Empire, Silesia. Come to think of it, ordinary drugs wouldn't be enough to bring down a genius mage who only appears once in a millennium. Plus, this guy had no memories of any related drug, which proves such things didn't exist in this mansion. Maybe there are some in that place. I need to sneak out before it's too late to check if it's really, as the novel says, a place where all kinds of dark forces and criminals hide. Otherwise, even if I want to shift the blame, I can't do it without proof. While Moon is lost in thought, a maid carrying a tray bumps into him. She falls to the ground and says it hurts. Then, looking at the spilled tea, she exclaims, "The Madame's master, black tea." The protagonist approaches her and says, "I'm sorry, I was lost in thought and didn't watch where I was going. Are you okay?" But despite his words, the girl is terrified. Your young master, Moon?" Frightened, the girl immediately stands up and says, "Young master, I'm so sorry. I'll clean it up right now." But no matter how much she wiped, the stain wouldn't come out, and she began to panic, crying, "Master, I'm so sorry. I swear I didn't mean it. Please don't hit me. Don't throw me naked into the streets. I'll never do it again. Please spare my life." Seeing the whole commotion, the protagonist thinks, it was just a little spilled tea. What scared this girl so much? How bad of an impression did the original owner leave on people? He tries to comfort her, saying it's okay. It was just a small mistake, and he won't punish her for it. She looks at him confused, and Moon asks, "Are you okay? Do you have a fever?" The girl, surprised, says, "Young master?" He replies, "Your forehead is so hot you could fry an egg on it. Why don't you rest a bit?" She hesitates and says they're short on staff because of the banquet. Moon insists, then asks, "By the way, what's your name?" She replies, "My name is Noel, young master." Anne shows up, and Moon orders her to let all 6 servants rest and hire more staff from outside. Anne bows and says, "Understood. I'll pass the order along." After that, the protagonist leaves, and once he's gone, Noel says, "Sister, I remember the young master once said he didn't want outsiders dirtying the Duke's mansion. That's why he didn't allow hiring maids from outside. But today, the young master?" Anne then replies, "Don't overthink it, just follow the young master's orders and go rest." After Noel leaves, Anne thinks that there are indeed some subtle changes compared to the past. So, to avoid uncontrollable situations, it seems that planning must be done in advance. And the scene cuts, and a bunch of jewels start falling to the floor. The protagonist was searching for something, or he then says, "Not this one, nor this one." I remember clearly. To deal with a genius mage like the princess, the only way is to make a special psychedelic potion. The problem is that not only is it extremely expensive and difficult to make, but it's also contraband. So, the only place I might be able to get this thing is... He finally finds it and excitedly says, "Found it! This guy really is a scoundrel." I remember it was really hard to get this in the original novel, the VIP pass to the underground black market. Later, the scene cuts to the Chessford Chamber of Commerce. The protagonist then says, "Wait here a bit, guys. I'll go buy some gold and silver jewelry for my parents to wear tomorrow." The guards reply, "Okay, master." He then looks back to check if no one's watching and quickly slips into an alley. Inside, he says, "According to the route I remember, it's deep in the sewers of Berlin's, outside the royal city." Upon arriving, he says, "Right here." In front of the door, there was a mysterious guy who says, "Halt." "Who's there?" Moon replies, "Sewer rats." The guy then asks, "Well, what do you want here, right?" Our boy shows his VIP pass and says, "I'm looking for Carnus. This is my credential." The guard then opens the door and says, "Honored guest, please come in." Finally, Moon had arrived at Leopold's underground black market. Potion ingredients, synthetic magic clues. It's worthy of a magical world. If I remember correctly, they also sell subhuman slaves here. One of the protagonist's future companions seems to have been bought here. Well, that's secondary. The important thing is to get the real job done first. The protagonist opens the door and the seller says, "Wow, finally we've got a customer today. Please come in. What would you like to see? Although our shop is small, we've got everything." Moon then asks about that potion. The seller asks, "That one?" And the protagonist replies, "It's colorless and odorless, specifically aimed at mages, and it knocks you out for several hours after ingestion." The seller responds, "Ah, I see. You rich folks like to play like that, huh? I happen to know some good slave shops. Want me to recommend one? You just need to pay a small referral fee, and if you mention my name, you even get a discount. The protagonist turns around and says, No need. I'm leaving. Seeing him leaving, the desperate seller shouts, I have it! I have it, young master. Please stay, but this treasure is rare. I need to search for it. Please wait just a moment. While the seller searches, the protagonist thinks she wore a mask that covered her entire face and her voice was magically altered. So it was impossible to tell if it was a man or a woman, but her tone and behavior. The seller then says, I remember the 2 vials I made the day before yesterday were in here. Where did they go? The protagonist looks at her and thinks, what a body. You know a lot, little protagonist. I agree. He then thinks, this woman is definitely a beauty. Besides that, the manager's cunning must be even more powerful than her beauty to stay alive in a place where all sorts of people gather and gangs take advantage of each other. If I can build a good relationship with her, maybe she can help me when I get exiled from the Empire in the future. Suddenly, someone opens the door, surprising the protagonist, and the seller says, Welcome, visitor. The person then says, I want to buy a kind of mysterious drug that's really strong but leaves no magical traces afterward. Do you have any? The seller then says, yes, please wait a moment. While thinking that normally no one is interested in this kind of potion, she finds it strange that 2 customers appeared today. The protagonist starts staring at that person and thinks, that silhouette, and the faint fragrance emanating from her body. Women have these kinds of needs too? Buying this drug will definitely hurt someone, but I can't interfere. That guy who's going to get drugged is on his own. The seller places 2 potions on the counter and says, Found them. Here it is. The protagonist thinks, wait, isn't that color too flashy? The seller then says, customers don't need to worry. Although the color of this medicine is bright, it becomes completely undetectable if placed in drinks like red wine. And compared to this little blade that isn't so discreet, the advantages are even greater. Just 1 drop can make an elephant lose consciousness instantly and faint for 2 to 3 hours. Moon is surprised and says, 1 drop can knock out an elephant? Is that true? She replies, of course it is. You get what you pay for. If you don't believe me, you can test it yourself. But if you fall asleep here, I'll charge a nursing fee of 5,000 emils per hour. The protagonist quickly says, no need. The seller then says, the special sleep potion, Nangyang's Dream, costs 130,000 emils. Our shop doesn't accept any form of negotiation. Would you like to pay by card or cash? The mysterious girl says she doesn't have enough emils and doesn't intend to pay with money. She then asks if she can trade information for the potion. The seller replies, Dear, I must remind you that 130,000 isn't a small amount. The girl responds, This information is easily worth 130,000, and for some people, it could be worth much more. The seller takes the paper and says, All right, let me see what this information is. Interesting. Are you sure this information is true? The girl answers, Whether it's true or not, I'd like you to find out with your skills as the shop owner. Hearing that, the seller says, This customer really trusts me, but as you said, it's indeed worth 130,000. Here, this is your potion. The girl takes the potion, thanks her, and leaves. The seller then turns to Moon and asks, And you, young master? He extends his hand and says, Here, swipe my card. She then places another bottle on the table and says, Young master, please take a crystal card, and this bottle is a small gift for you. He then asks, A small gift? What's this bottle for? She explains, This is the bottle I use. The experience will be much better if you use it with the red bottle. The protagonist replies, Thanks, manager. By the way, that information the girl mentioned? She quickly gets excited and says, Wow, master, are you also interested in that information? Considering we're old acquaintances, I'll sell it to you for this price. She holds up 9 fingers and he asks, 90,000? She replies, 900,000. The protagonist stands still for a moment, turns around and says, No thanks, while thinking, Damn, she almost made 7 times the profit just by passing things around right in front of me. That's suspicious. No, this market is full of people looking for profit. Even if I spend money, there's a high chance that not only won't they help me in the future, but they'll probably take advantage of me. I still need to find a more trustworthy partner. The seller then bids him farewell, saying, Goodbye, young master. Please come again next time. After our boy leaves, the seller touches her mask and says, Oh my, I thought tomorrow was just the coming-of-age ceremony for that useless young master of the Campbell family, and I didn't expect the 3rd princess to be there. Who should I sell this information to? Remember that the 2nd prince never liked his exceptional sister, plus there's Duke Raymond, who's always been in conflict with Grand Duke Campbell. What an interesting thing. Why not sell it to both sides, killing 2 birds with 1 stone? I really am a bad girl. Man, she's a stunner, huh? The next day at the Campbell Castle, the coming-of-age ceremony had begun. Moon and his father were greeting the guests. The girl's father then said, Your Excellency, this is my 3rd daughter. Come say hello. A bit shy, she said, I met Grand Duke Campbell, and I also met... Then she caught sight of Moon Campbell and became completely terrified. She quickly ran off, saying, My mother is calling me. Sorry, I have to go. The girl's father apologized, saying his daughter was a little shy and excused her behavior. Moon replied, It's all right, don't worry. It's our fault for not welcoming you properly. Please, have a seat. Seeing the whole situation, the protagonist thought, just as I imagined, not only the Marquis Hill's daughter, but everyone's gaze is practically the same. The original owner's reputation is truly terrible. The protagonist's father then placed his hand on his head and said, I'm very pleased with your performance today. I was a little worried before, but it seems now that was unnecessary as you are the protagonist of today's coming-of-age ceremony. After tonight, you will no longer be a boy, but a true man of my Campbell family. So do your best, son. The protagonist replied, I will try my best. The guard then announced, please everyone, be silent. Let us welcome the third in line to the Leopold Empire's succession, the pure-hearted girl blessed by the goddess of ice and snow, the third princess, Silesia. After the princess's arrival, the protagonist's father said, I'll receive the other two dukes. I leave this place in your hands. Remember not to neglect Her Royal Highness, the princess. The protagonist responded, okay, father. Then he bowed to the princess, who looked surprised. She said, it's been a while, master. He replied, you look beautiful today. Without showing much reaction, she said, really? Thank you for the compliment. Then she bowed, saying it was rare to hear such words of praise coming from young Master Moon. The protagonist chuckled awkwardly and said, Your Highness, the way you said it makes it sound like I'm one of those rude people who can't even control their own mouth. With a serious expression, she asked, Aren't you? Leaving our boy surprised. Moon said, Your Highness must be tired after coming from the capital. It's better to go in and rest a bit first. The banquet will officially begin later. She started walking without showing much reaction and said, Thank you for that. Relieved, the protagonist sighed. Phew. She finally left. She really is beautiful, but also terrifying, as expected of the novel's first female protagonist. Her aura is truly intimidating. While greeting other people at the party, Silesia thought, Moon seems a bit different today. She wondered if it was because he had become more polite. The guests then began to whisper, The illegitimate daughter is here too. Isn't she the girl who dueled with her fiancé not long ago? Hearing all those comments, the protagonist became intrigued. The murmurs continued. I heard Count Bugard just handed over the heir's position to her. Besides being an illegitimate daughter, she's also a woman. How could she be qualified to inherit the Count title? I don't know what Count Bugard is thinking. Seeing two girls entering, the protagonist thought, Finally, the real protagonist of the novel has arrived. The greatest female character in this world, Ariel Bugard. The girls approached, and Ariel, with a serious expression, said, Hello, young Master Moon. We meet again. How have you been recently? Seeing that she was completely uninterested, Moon awkwardly replied that he was fine. However, someone suddenly shouted, You insolent worm! How dare you speak like that to young Master Moon? The protagonist quickly covered his mouth and told him to shut up, leaving Ariel puzzled. The protagonist then said, I've been very well lately, Miss Ariel Bugard. Thank you for your concern. Noticing that he hadn't acted with hostility, Ariel sensed something strange and began to wonder, what's going on? He didn't even call me a despicable, illegitimate daughter like he always does? His pea-sized brain actually managed to remember my full name. Could he be sick? Or is there some conspiracy behind this? The protagonist then extends his hand to the little girl and says, This must be Miss Leah, right? The frightened little girl asks, Does young Master Moon really know my name? And he replies, Of course, how could I not know the name of today's important guest, Miss Leah Angel? However, Ariel slaps his hand away and questions, What are you up to today? She then grabs him by the collar and says, Moon Campbell, listen, the only reason I'm here is because of your father. No matter what conspiracy you have, just come and face me. If you dare have any evil thoughts towards Leah, I'll never let you escape. Then she turns and says, Leah, let's go. Seeing her reaction, the protagonist thinks, It seems she has a strong stereotype of the original owner, and it's hard to change that in a short time, but putting that aside, our fates will be like two parallel lines that never cross. From now on, she will be a savior, and he will be just a common worker. Who knows? Maybe a bright future awaits them. Some time passes and everything happens as expected. He was on the upper floor with his parents in front of all the nobles present. Moon Campbell had finally finished his coming-of-age speech, and at 18 years old, in the presence of all the Empire's nobles, he says, From today onwards, I am the official heir of the Campbell family. But unfortunately, if everything goes according to the original story, this heir title will only be valid until tonight. After the speech, Moon was relieved that it was finally over. He then thinks, Next step, time to get to work. He begins searching for Princess Silesia until he finally finds her, looking out the window with a glass of wine in her hand. The protagonist approaches her and says, Actually, I left the noble princess alone. It seems that, as a host, I was very rude. He then asks, Would I have the honor of inviting you to dance? She, completely uninterested, asks, Are you asking me out or what? And he replies, Of course, my beautiful highness. She then says, However, to keep up appearances, she adds, Forget it. Today is your coming-of-age ceremony, so of course I have no reason to refuse. Moon takes her hand and thanks her. All the guests begin to find it strange. Leah then says, Ariel, look at this. And Ariel asks, What happened? In the middle of the hall were Moon and Silesia, drawing everyone's attention. Silesia comments that he has great dance steps, and the protagonist thanks her for the compliment, saying he's still a beginner. She, surprised, says, You really have changed, Moon Campbell? He asks, In what aspect? Am I not behaving like a noble? Silesia replies, That's not it, and says it's the way he invites people. Our boy is left puzzled and asks, Way of inviting? She then says, I remember you said this when you invited a Viscount's daughter to the last college ball. Woman, be happy and celebrate because this young master had the mercy to grant you the right to dance with. Moon is stunned hearing that and says, no, but unable to come up with an excuse. She then asks, so did I imitate it well? And he says, I was mistaken, Your Highness Silesia. Could you please forget what happened back then? After that, the party continues, and to the sound of violins, Moon and Silesia are dancing. The protagonist then asks, after this dance, would you mind coming to my room? And she replies, Moon Campbell, you and I are engaged, but... And he responds, I understand, Your Highness. I have no intention of crossing any boundaries. It's precisely about the engagement that I'd like to discuss with Your Highness indeed. She's surprised to hear that and asks, do you really need a private conversation with me about our relationship? Moon then says, I know I'm not to your liking and that our marriage is just a political arrangement to maintain the relationship with my father. This is the wish of His Majesty the King. If Your Highness cancels the engagement, it would affect the royal family's reputation and your relationship with His Majesty, wouldn't it? She hesitantly agrees. He then leans close to her ear and says, so at least we agree on canceling the engagement. If we work together, maybe we can solve this in a better way. What do you think, Your Highness? Silesia finally relents and says, I understand. This is something we can only discuss between the two of us. Excited, the protagonist thinks she took the bait. I'm sorry, Your Highness, but to keep the story on the right track, I have no choice. She then interrupts his thoughts and asks, which one is your room? Leaving our boy confused. She then starts dragging him, saying they don't need to wait until the ball is over and that they'll go now. Everyone was watching them, and the protagonist was worried that this would affect the princess's reputation. However, she doesn't relent, and he just accepts the situation. Watching everything were two maids, and one of them comments, she went with that idiot young master. This is the perfect moment, so let's take action. The other says, we need to act fast because this is King Lionheart's territory. Shortly after, in Moon's room, the protagonist brings a drink for them, but the princess apologizes and says she doesn't drink. He says, it's just red wine. However, she stands firm and says she doesn't drink, even if it's red wine, because she cannot drink alcohol, not even a drop. The protagonist then says, all right then, while thinking, damn, how the hell did this happen? The novel doesn't show how I won over the princess. The potion is too red. How will I give it to her if she doesn't drink? He then asks, if Your Highness doesn't drink, what would you like to have? And she replies, coffee. However, Moon says they only have black tea. She finds that strange, wondering how a family like his wouldn't have coffee. Moon explains that due to some unforeseen circumstances, they only have red wine and black tea tonight. She then says, only black tea? Then let's have black tea. Excited, he leaves and says, all right, I'll get it now. She notices his excitement and wonders, is this guy making tea such a big deal? Back to the protagonist, he's making the tea, looking around to avoid being caught and adding the potion. He thinks, one drop of potion is enough, but it doesn't hurt to add a few more when dealing with a powerful mage like Silesia. He then looks at the other bottle Ariel had received and concludes that he doesn't know what's in it, so he decides not to add it, just to be safe. However, while he was pouring the potion, Silesia appeared and asked if he wasn't done yet, startling. He quickly turned around, hiding both hands, and said it would be ready soon. She then started staring at him and he said, Your Highness, please stay seated. She turned around and began to walk back. But while he had his hands behind his back, the white vial had spilled into the tea, and its contents were aphrodisiac. The protagonist was trembling all over from the situation, but realizing she had left, he felt relieved and thought, I was so nervous. Good thing this potion doesn't have magical variations, or I would have been caught. Then he noticed something strange, and realized that all the potion had spilled onto the floor. He couldn't believe it, and lamented because he was planning to dilute it in water, divide it into 10,000 potions, and sell them as sleeping aids to make his first money. However, now it was too late. Silesia then called for him, and he replied that he was coming. Upon arriving, he apologized for the delay. She then noticed something odd and said, Young Master Moon, your family's black tea is so red it looks like it glows. Feeling awkward, he tried to make up an excuse and said, This is the precious tea from the east that my family just bought. I think it's called Gran Santo Vermelho. That's right, that's the name. She started getting suspicious and asked, Really? Then you first, young Master. He questioned, Your Highness, do you think I did something to the drinks? Would I, Mooncamp? And she said, Young Master Moon is very sensitive. You're the host, so you should serve the tea first. That's basic noble etiquette. He then said, Well, since your Highness doesn't believe me, I can only... When he was about to drink, she said, Wait a moment, and then took his tea, saying, Young Master's tea looks better than mine. Do you mind if we switch? At that moment, the protagonist realized he was screwed. However, after the princess drank the tea she had taken from Moon, she felt something strange. Seeing her reaction, a worried Moon said, Your Highness? Little by little, she began to lose consciousness until she finally collapsed onto the sofa, letting the tea fall to the floor. The protagonist stood still, staring at her. Seeing that situation, he thought, Good thing I was smart enough to drug both cups, or things would have gone wrong. It's a secret remedy that can knock someone out with just one drop. The dealer who sold it to me wasn't lying about the quality, but now that I think about it, Didn't the original text say the princess couldn't drink alcohol? Did the original owner also put drugs in the tea, or was it just a coincidence? He then concluded, now's not the time to talk about that because in the original story, the female protagonist is supposed to arrive at any moment, so I need to get ready. He pulled her sock down a bit and adjusted her clothes, but concluded that wasn't enough and thought, if I pull the bottom part down, she'll be exposed and might get sick, so I'd better mess up her hair a bit. Finally, he said, what about me? And tried to take off his shirt. He wondered why it was so hard to remove that piece of clothing, and after many attempts, he finally managed to take it off. Then he said, mission accomplished. Now I just have to wait for the protagonist. Moon looked at the clock and wondered what was happening. It's been half an hour and the protagonist still hasn't shown up. In the original story, wasn't Ariel supposed to arrive to save the princess and defeat me? What's going on? Where is she? Wait, how did this scene happen in the original? He then started to remember. If I'm not mistaken, Ariel's clothes got stained by a seriously ill maid at the Duke's mansion. After that, she went to the bathroom to find something to clean up. And that's when she noticed something strange and caught me just as I was about to attack the princess, or rather the original owner. After reflecting, he finally realized that the sick maid could be Noel, the girl he had asked to rest. At that moment, he turned to the princess and thought, it can't be. This means the original story has changed. This is a huge problem. The princess then slowly began to wake up, and upon realizing the situation she was in, Silesia started to release an overwhelming aura. However, our boy hadn't noticed and thought, calm down. Even if something went wrong, the important thing is that the princess was drugged. There must be a way to fix this. Then he noticed something strange and asked himself, why did it suddenly get so cold? Shouldn't it be summer? A hand then passed by him, surprising him, and immediately after, an explosion occurred, sending all the furniture flying away. Silesia's ice aura was freezing everything around, and she was on top of Moon. Realizing the situation he was in, he quickly tried to explain and said, Your Highness, please listen to me. It's not what you're thinking. However, she said, it's hot, leaving Moon surprised and confused about what was happening. Her face was flushed, and she said, my body feels strange. Seeing her condition, Moon said, no, this is wrong. Your Highness, please wait. I'll call a doctor right now. However, both of Moon's hands were frozen, and she slowly began to approach him. Silesia then said, your body, it's so perfect, just the way I like it. Moon then said, please, Your Highness, wake up. You're not yourself. As he thought, Ariel, the protagonist, please save me. If this happens, the fake story will become real. The princess interrupted his thoughts, and they began to perform mouth-to-mouth breathing. At the same time, in another location, a girl was wearing a dress stained with tea. As she tried to clean it, she said, seriously, Leah, is that idiot? How could she be so careless and stain my new dress with cake? However, Ariel noticed something strange, and then asked, who's there? A maid then appeared and said, excuse me, miss, but the area ahead is restricted in the Duke's mansion, so please turn around and go back. Ariel then asked, restricted area? What restricted area? Jan replied, that's a secret of the Duke's mansion, and I can't tell you. Ariel then said, so secretive. Jan then noticed something and said, miss, your clothes seem to be dirty. She replied, yes, I'm just looking for a bathroom to clean myself with some water. Jan then said, leave it to me. I'll take care of that for you. She then cast a spell on the stain and said, Ariel, surprised, said, worthy of the great Duke Campbell. Even the mansion's maids can use magic. Our employer says he knows a little, but it's nothing worth mentioning. Jan then said, the cleaning is done. And just a reminder, at the banquet, there will be a limited amount of pastiche pie, so if you like it, please don't miss out. Upon hearing that, Ariel got excited, and as she left, she said, thanks for the help, Miss Maid. I need to get that pie. Jan, with a smile, said, you're welcome. Take care. However, after Ariel left, Jan's expression quickly changed to a cold one. As Ariel headed toward the banquet, she thought, the maid was strange. She smelled of blood. The other person hiding also seemed suspicious, but what does that have to do with me? She was doing that in the Duke's mansion, so it has nothing to do with me. As for Princess Silesia, unfortunately she's already an adult and the greatest magic prodigy of the younger generation. And so how could she be dominated by an idiot playboy? Now nothing is more important than my pastiche pie. The scene cuts to other maids, and one of them says, the girl is gone, and then asks, is she also the target of your mission? The other replies, no, she was number 9's target. My former companion, so I know a few things about her. The tomboy maid says, number 9, I remember he failed his mission. The white-haired maid says, he fell into that girl's hands. Number 9 was stronger, but she killed him. The tomboy then asks, by the way, how much time is left? We don't have much time. The other replies, it's almost ready. After all, it was planned by Lionheart King Ron Campbell. Even though it's something big that covers the entire Duke's palace, it's not easy to create a breach without alerting him. The tomboy says, we need to hurry, because if Moon Campbell or Princess Silesia shows up, our mission will be a failure. The white-haired one says, I know, but I think we still have time. When we were looking at the inner wall, it seemed like those two were... The scene cuts to the protagonist, who was panting, relieved that it was finally over. He then thinks, I ran as much as I could and managed to maintain my reputation as a wizard who stayed a virgin for 30 years of life. If I had taken the last step and done that with the princess, I probably wouldn't have been exiled, but executed. But it seems that now there doesn't seem to be any disrespect. There was a sword pointed at him. The princess was furious. She then says, "What are your last words, Moon Campbell? This is your last chance to say something before you die." And he answers, "Well, if I don't speak, I won't die." An aura of ice begins to emanate from her, and as she walks toward the protagonist, she says, "Since you have no last words?" Moon begins to panic and says, Wait, give me a minute, let me think a little." He then thinks, it's over. If I don't manage to calm her down, I'll die before the guillotine. I don't know if I'll have another chance to be reborn. Now that it has come to this point, all I have left is to trust in modern wisdom. He then says, "I had true love in front of me, but I didn't know how to value it. I only realized this when I lost it. If God gave me another chance." She then brings the sword closer to him and tries to cut him. However, he quickly dodges and she questions, "Is that why you're so unpleasant, Moon?" He then asks, "Was I unpleasant?" "Well, it's a very sincere feeling on my part. Actually, we haven't even reached that point yet, so about what happened today." Silesia becomes even angrier and asks, "You call that sincerity? Those dirty methods? Are you playing with me, Moon Campbell? If you really liked me, you should stand in front of me and impress me with your character, strength, and sincerity as a real man. If you do that, and I'm still in love, maybe I'll keep the deal and marry you." Zrenia Silesia then begins to cry, and with a sad look she says, "But you chose to drug me, the most despicable and shameful method." Seeing that she was crying, the protagonist says, "Silesia, I'm sorry, I'm being sincere. I had no other choice. I just wanted a result. I never wanted to hurt you." She then says, "Shut up," and kneels while placing her sword on the protagonist's neck. However, someone knocks on the door, drawing both of their attention. After that, the princess grabs him by the neck and says, "Tell whoever is outside to go away." The protagonist says he can't because this room is soundproof. Only the knocks on the door can enter and the sound from inside doesn't get out. Silesia then relents and lets go of him, saying, "I'll forgive you for now, so get dressed and open the door." Moon, almost out of breath, says, "Okay," as he puts on his clothes. He thinks, this is really a big problem. There are only two options left, being killed by Silesia herself, being hanged in public by a king, or being dismembered by a stranger in a dungeon like in a dream. Either way, I'm out of options. "Oh, protagonist, the matter is settled. What's the point of appearing now?" However, when he opens the door, he is surprised. It wasn't the protagonist, but a maid. She then says, "The lady saw you were talking to the princess for a long time and thought you might be hungry, so she asked me to bring some snacks." The protagonist then says, "Thanks for your hard work. Put them on the table." The protagonist then notices something strange and says, "Hey, wait, why do I have the impression that I've never seen you before?" The maid replies, "I was chosen yesterday to join the Duke's mansion, so it's normal that young Master Moon doesn't know me." Moon then asks, "You're here to help with the banquet, right? But I remember Anne said there were no extra maid uniforms, so they only hired regular servants." Swingingly, the maid's expression changes and she starts advancing toward the princess. Moon quickly yells, "Assassin!" and is then thrown away by the maid's aura. The protagonist then thinks, wait, if it's not for me, it must be for her, and then shouts Silesia's name. The princess then looks ahead and realizes someone was trying to assassinate her. The attack then happens, and an overwhelming aura emanates from her, leaving Moon stunned. He then begins to recover slowly and worried says, "Silesia." However, she managed to defend herself and then asks, "Was it that idiot of my brother who sent you?" She replies, "Apologies, the employer's information is confidential, and you don't need to know, Your Highness, for you will die today." Component placement. The maid begins to cast several spells and says, "The third princess of the empire was assassinated in the Grand Duke Campbell's palace. This will be your end." The spells start heading toward her, causing an explosion. The maid then retreats and says, "With such a powerful magical attack, even the academy instructors couldn't..." She then notices something. Silesia was casting a spell. The ice turns into frost, and the frost becomes the spear, releasing absolute power. Silesia then charges toward her and tries to hit her with the spear. However, the maid manages to dodge by a hair's breadth. The princess has an arrogant look, while the assassin realizes she is in trouble. The protagonist, witnessing all of this, thinks, "Gods, mortals suffer. I can't stay here. I won't even know how I died." He then tries to open the door but realizes it's locked. He then realizes he's screwed. He starts crawling to get out, and as he hides, he thinks, the door was blocked. It must have been the maid's doing, but this shouldn't have happened. In the original novel, there was no part about an assassination. How could the Duke biscuit swing? He then remembers something and thinks, wait, could it be? He remembers that he had told them to fill the positions with people from outside the mansion, and stunned, he asks himself, could this have been because of my order? How is this possible? The decision to seek outside help was made last night. Has someone been watching the Duke's mansion all this time? Component placement. A blow almost hits him, and he concludes, now all I can do is hope Silesia can defeat the assassin because my body isn't strong enough for a battle of this level. But the assassin is only targeting Silesia and the original story has been altered. Zrenia. We don't know what will happen, but for now, is Silesia winning really a good ending? If Silesia were to die here, no one would know what happened. The assassin then speaks. As expected, you are the super genius chosen by God, Princess Silesia. And the princess responds with a fast and precise movement with her legs, light arrow magic, and magic that makes my body heavy. The last two spells had no magical variation, so I think they were cast by the assassin in the next room. The maid is surprised and says she saw our magic with just a glance, as the rumors say. No, the rumors are not right. I've eliminated geniuses before, even among them, you could be seen as a monster. Silesia gets into a fighting stance and says, tell me who's behind this and I will spare your life. However, the assassin also gets into a fighting stance and asks, are you serious? Actually, as an assassin, I shouldn't waste time with you, but sometimes even assassins need to buy time, don't they? Something strange starts to happen, and the other assassin says, the room is completely blocked. Quickly, I won't hold on for much longer. The tomboy assassin says, understood, and takes something out of her bag. A black aura was emanating from the object, and the assassin says, with the blood of 100 hearts of children, make a sacrifice to the god of the melted world, the lord of the red sun, and the great king of destruction. Upon seeing that scene, Khaleesi says, the cursed god's ritual. Then she charges forward, and the maid says, please grant me the power of the wind and snow. Silesia's spell begins to unravel, and she is thrown away, crashing her back against the shelf. Almost powerless, she says, dark priests, sewer rats, how dare you appear in front of me? The assassin asks, rats? Really? For the princess? Are we really rats? She then charges forward and says, but your highness will die at the hands of these rats. Silesia then notices something and grabs Moon's dagger. The assassin then charges at her, and blood begins to fly everywhere. The assassin notices something strange. Silesia is still standing. She then says, interesting. I didn't expect that. In addition to being good at magic, you are also good with a sword. You protected all the vital points well, but now you can't use ice magic. Now you're just a lamb to be sacrificed. The maid then lands a kick, throwing her away. However, the princess is still standing, panting and almost powerless. With an arrogant look, the assassin says, now I feel comfortable, and now, princess, your head is mine. The assassin then charges and stabs her with the dagger, causing blood to fly everywhere. However, the maid notices something strange. Not even Silesia expected that. Moon Campbell stepped in front of her, leaving Silesia surprised. The assassin didn't expect Moon Campbell to interfere. If you want the next part, leave lots of likes and comments down below.